Independent Networks. I'm your host, Ricky Blues. This is your co-host, Tim Walker. And this week, we're bringing you a new topic. What's that new topic, Tim?
It's called the hot seat.
The hot seat. So that's going to be quite interesting. We'll explain the rules in just a second. But fans, if you've joined us in the past, you know that we bring you stories from the persons, the characters, the matches, the organizations and promotions that populated the Mid-Atlantic independent wrestling scene from the late 1980s to the early 2000s.
One of our Facebook followers sent me a message this week. And they had a question.
Uh-oh, putting me on the hot seat?
Yeah, I think we're going to put you on the hot seat this week.
Okay.
I think we're going to do the first ever edition of the Pin Hot Seat.
The Pin Hot Seat. That's a good idea, Tim.
And the rules of the hot seat are that any questions or follow-up questions are fair game.
Okay.
The questions and answers have not been discussed beforehand.
Nope.
And only one take is allowed in order to get the most candid response possible.
Okay. No editing.
No editing, unrehearsed, no holds barred.
No holds barred.
Raw footage.
Okay.
Are you up to it?
I'm up to it, but just think of this. Today you ask me, I'm going to set the bar. When we do our interviews with our cohorts, we're putting them on the hot seat as well.
Well, that'll be interesting.
I think so. All right, Tim, fire away.
All right, today's question is, compare and contrast working as an independent wrestler in the Mid-Atlantic region in the early 1990s to working as an independent today. Was it more fun then or now? Was the quality of independent wrestling better then or now? And why do you see more poorly run and poorly attended independents today?
Wow, that is a tough question. All right, I can tell you this. For me, when I came in, I hearken it all back to where it began, with a credible training facility that gave me all the fundamentals I was going to need to perform in this business and to pay it forward back in this business. So that was the Monster Factory for me. And I came in with a lot of good guys in the background. Rip Sawyer, Dave Casanova, Axel Rotten, somebody who doesn't get much credit, who was an incredible performer in the Mid-Atlantic area, Agent Orange. They were guys that actually taught us the tools of the trade. So I look at that time period and I say to myself, to answer part of that question is, that period was so much better because it paved the way for this newer generation, but it's also gift and curse. And I'll say this. We had a much better time because we were better trained. There was better cooperation. We had, and it was, remember, this is the close of the territories, the opening of the independents. So we had that very last thread of the territories and the beginning of the independents. So we were able to set the stage. We kind of, I don't want to say we made our own rules, but we were painting on an unblemished canvas. We came in, it was extremely hot. The local shows, the very first show that I was on in Maryland was at Odenton Fire Hall that only held 300. The fire marshal was going to shut us down because we had 600 people in there. 600 rabid fans in a small fire hall. And that was a great place to go and start. The quality was so good because we all trained together. And it wasn't 2 and 3 guys training. Not only did the new people who were coming in, myself, Bill Cook, Adrian Hall, Hack Myers, all in one of the classes, the same class, but we had professionals who were there with us constantly. And training was at a premium. I mean, we were there 3, 4, 5 times a week for 3, 4 hours at a time, and we were wrestling. And we were learning to wrestle and learn to hone our craft. So I say that time was better because, and I'll contrast it to today. I've been to a bunch of promotions and tried to help some promotions out. And I would go to where they were training, because it all starts with me with training. And there was nobody in the ring training. They were all on the side, breaking complete kayfabe. They were trying to put each other over with telling how great they were and this and that. And no one was in the ring working. And when you did have someone go in the ring and try to learn, you had people who were totally unqualified trying to teach them. And you can't. You can't teach if you don't know the trade yourself. And I saw a lot of that. So there's the comparison and contrast to that. The time that we were coming in was again, we were breaking new ground. This was virgin territory. People liked what we were going on because we were still doing wrestling. Some of the high-flying stuff was catching on, but it was still wrestling. You still had to know arm drags, arm bars, all the things, the chain work that we used to call it, to get in there and show that even though, like me, I was a smaller guy. I was only 212 pounds, and I'm in there with giants, but I still needed to know how to wrestle because that travels.
Right.
And I thought that was extremely important. I see that today is completely missing. Legitimate trainers in legitimate schools. The access of the internet and those things has made it such a slippery slope that anybody can open up a wrestling business, put up some advertisement, bring a few people in, 10, 15 people to watch their show, and all of a sudden they're calling themselves professionals. To me, that's the final dagger in the business's heart. I mean, it kills it off. Where's your developmental territories today? We were the developmental territories. Look at the people who come out of the classes that we were in. Chris Candido, right? Glenn Ruth, Bam Bam Bigelow. All those guys were getting big time contracts. We were all working together. Axel Rotten got moved. You moved to the NWA, WCW. Got a little stint here and there. So we had a proven track record and proven prowess through hard work, and not just saying we were professional wrestlers. So I see that as a contrast. Was it more fun back then or today? I'll tell you this. When I look at the Mid-Atlantic area, I look at us traveling. And I mean, every weekend, I might not have wrestled every weekend in Maryland, but I was in Virginia one weekend, Maryland the next weekend, West Virginia the following weekend, up in New Jersey, up in Delaware, into Pennsylvania. And it was a circuit. When you said independent circuit, it was a circuit. And we were traveling all over those states wrestling. So you were wrestling, if you had 30, 31 days in a month, you might have wrestled 10 to 15 times. And that's not even counting us getting together in the gym constantly and working out. The thing that I thought was most important about a professional is you had to have the gas in the tank to go.
Right.
And if you didn't do that, you didn't have the gas in the tank to go, people didn't want you there. They wanted, because it wasn't a 4, 5, 6 minute match until we did TV stuff. Those matches, those early matches with myself and Agent Orange, they were 25, 30 minute matches. That was the routine.
Right.
And it wasn't overpopulated. You might have had 7 or 8 matches total, and the 8th match, getting back into our topic, would have been a gimmick match like a battle royal. So for me, back then was way much better. It was much better cooperation, much better competition, much better camaraderie. Today, I think today is the internet generation. I want everything and I want it now like that, and I don't want to pay my dues to earn it. And I see a lot of that.
I'd like to follow up with one question.
Okay?
How would you compare the promoters during that time period, during the late 1980s and early 1990s,
to today's
independent promoters? And do you think that plays a lot into how fun it was back then as compared to how lack of fun it is now?
Yep, and I'll give you this perfect example. When I come in, we were talking about promoters like Larry Sharp, Dennis Corluso, Ed Zahn, Lou Martin, and David Lehigh. Who else did we have? Dick Karakoff. Right. Have any of you ever seen them wrestle? No, because they were promoters. Their primary concern was getting their business over. And if you were getting over as either a heel or a face, feeding you to that next level. The problem today is, you talk about these promotions that are out, the promoter, the booker, they're all wrestlers. So that convolutes the very nature of the business. It muddies the waters, and what promoter or what booker isn't going to put themselves over in spite of what's best business for the business? That's a big problem. And they do it at the expense of the boys. Coming up, we had that unfettered relationship where if we were getting over, the promoters had our best interest. The bookers had our best interest. When it stepped on that slippery slope, that's when organizations fell apart. That's when the business fell apart. Today, you don't have that. So that's a complete contrast and difference. That's why you're not drawing so well. Even people might draw 30, 40, 50 people. That's horrible. That's horrible. we were all the time. We were in the hundreds, whether 200, 300, 400, in the smallest venues. We've been North Carroll. We've had 2,000 people in Steeltown. We've had 1,000 people in the complex. One of the other complexes in Maryland that was a small flea market. We had 2,000 people in Wynn's first show. You don't see that today, and if you do, it's heralded as a great success. But that was commonplace back then, and it was because we were providing them a much better product.
When you mentioned those promoters,
Mm-hmm.
there was a level of professionalism that each of them had.
Yep.
They were each very knowledgeable. They each ran very professional events. If they booked you for a certain amount of pay, you received that amount of pay. They didn't cancel shows regularly. They were very dependable. There was that relationship between the wrestlers and the promoters that they don't have now.
Because it was treated as a business. They were the executives of the business. You were the hired hands, the help. And the more that you shilled out and did, the higher and more the fans either loved or hated you, the higher you went. And there was a respect ratio that doesn't exist today because they saw that as this is money that we can make. Okay, you're now becoming money. It's not like that today.
You're right.
It's when the booker, promoter, and wrestler is one and the same, your business fails.
And when we're talking about bookers, don't you think that the ultimate booker would probably be a wrestler who has been retired, that knows the wrestling business, knows how to run a card, knows how to interact with wrestlers, and basically knows the business inside and out, and has no personal interest in his own booking.
Right.
That there is no vested interest in him booking himself to the top of the card.
Right.
Instead, his attention would be on all the wrestlers and making it the best card possible for the fans.
When you look at your booker, that is someone who should have, in their own experience, and now at the end of that experience, that collective resource that they've built should be able to fill into that position. So you want a promoter was respected in the business, who knew the craft, who could perform the craft, who was taught how to cut promos, was taught TV, was taught pacing, was taught the gift of selling, which is extremely important, and has that creative mind that he can take all that experience that he has or she has, wrap it up, and teach someone else by just the mere contact that, hey, these are the tools that you're going to need to be successful in the business. So I agree that you have to have that, and a wrestler themselves is going to be that once they've gotten to the end of the career, because you don't want that whole bottom line that you're going to get yourself over.
I think one of the most successful bookers in the history of wrestling was probably Pat Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
Retired wrestler.
Right?
Had done announcing, was familiar with TV, knew all the aspects of the business.
Worked exclusively in his early career, San Francisco, in that whole territory there that developed a lot. California, TV, all those things.
And worked with like some great people in California, like Ray Stevens. And then he traveled all over the United States, working in the AWA and different territories. Here in the Northeast as well. I mean, well-traveled, well-known, very knowledgeable, very creative, and very smart to create characters that he knew down the road, maybe in a year or two, you could see this character and this character, and the slow build over time to meet at a certain point. Just the planning that went into all that. Just for instance, the Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage.
The build-up for that.
The build-up for that was incredible. That whole thing of the creativity and the knowing of the characters and where you want them to go is just incredible. And of course, it came from a former wrestler.
So, there's a note for you promoters that are professing to be independent contractors. That's a formula that works well. Use it to your advantage. Reach out. There's plenty of good guys that can give you a hand with that.
That's a good suggestion. I think that's great. I think we had some very interesting questions and some even more interesting answers this week on the hot seat.
I tell you, I sweat a little bit because I can feel the heat. Great questions. Keep them coming.
I like to put you on the hot seat a little bit. I like to see you squirm once in a while. Better you than me.
Yeah.
Well, for this week's episode, thank you viewers for watching again. And we look forward to seeing you on future episodes of Pioneers of the Independent Networks.
We're wanting you to join us again next week as we take you down that proverbial stroll down Concussion Lane.